Greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. I pray you're doing well. I wanted to share some messages that I got recently that sparked some thoughts and ideas. First of all, there was a man who reached out to me on my Substack channel and had seen one of my videos and write-ups and was interested in Islam. This was probably a year ago, I guess. I don't know, it's hard to keep track of time. But he just had some questions because, we are navigating a time where the Islamophobic rhetoric is it's so strong, it's so insidious, it's hard to avoid. And for someone who is touched by Islam in some way or considering becoming Muslim, it is really hard to navigate that. And so I gave him a kind of my long spiel about how Islam is beautiful and it's about, developing a relationship with God, and suggested some sources to read and check out. For us Muslims, it's really like an opportunity to just share when someone asks you. One of the things I loved about Islam is it's not about actively trying to convert people, but I think it's much more about just helping to support people and guide people if they ask. And so that was really my thought when he approached me. And, over the course of a year or so, he reached out several times, and someone I've never met, but someone who I could tell, from his Substack that he was smart and accomplished and a great writer and, had a certain vantage point. And so I suggested, take a look at these sorts of things. I think this will appeal to you. So just shortly, not that long ago, he reached out and he thanked me for my approach. Very, gentle, hands off. I'm just kind of like, okay, here, let me give you this to think about. And he told me that he was going to take his Shahada. And, I was so happy on the one hand because I felt like, okay, this is something that is such a blessing, right? When someone can reach out to you and you can help guide them or help them or support them. And they find Islam because I've been through this journey before. I know how difficult it is and I know what a gift it is. But at the same time, I was also just a little bit, I don't even know what the right word is. It's like bittersweet. You're excited, you're happy, but then then I think, oh my gosh, what will you encounter now, especially as you enter this Islamophobic world? You encounter Muslims who are extremely well-intentioned, but may, give you all kinds of advice that is not learned or is not, is problematic. Let's just put it that way for right now. What community, a lot of people are looking for community and, and I know my own experience over the last 30 years as a Muslim and, it's community is one of those things that is challenging to come by, especially for someone who comes to Islam, through a critical thinking lens and, through, I don't know, because I can't say what he went through, but I can imagine that in this time when people are so moved by Islam, and especially with what's happening in Gaza, and and seeing Islam in a way that they really haven't seen it before, like people who have lost everything but still have such unshakable faith in God and belief in God. That is something that just moves you, and like, what in the world do they believe in that that it's just very inspiring. And so it's often, as we know now, there are many people that are converting to Islam and they're moved by that. So as someone who is observing this dynamic, I feel such a bittersweet combination of emotions because I know how difficult it's going to be. And I pray that God will guide people to the right influences, the right sources, and help them to navigate. And, of course, I do believe that God, guides people and is on their journey. And especially when people open their hearts to God and to being guided, that God will put you through whatever, different experiences you need to help you on your journey. But we also know that there are a lot of people who will fall off the journey because what they encounter, or the people that they encounter, or the messages that they encounter are so challenging and so difficult. So I always wish and hope that people who convert will come and find the work that we're doing at the Usuli Institute, because so much of what we're building is based on a foundation of critical thinking and true knowledge, and that supports you as an individual, hoping and seeking for strength and empowerment, liberation, love, beauty, not harshness, not oppression, not more rules that will hold you back from becoming your authentic, beautiful self as God intended and created you, with a purpose. I mean, for me as a convert, this journey that we offer, or this methodology at the Usuli Institute, has been absolutely life-transforming and affirming in every way. But so many people don't find that, and they get lost in the woods. They start interacting with people who are very concerned about rules and oppressive approaches, let's just say, and it's really difficult to navigate. So that was just a really, like I said, I was so happy for this person who reached out to me, and I'm also just praying that he finds his way, and like really fortifies himself with good knowledge. I mean, this is the same thing that I just keep saying over and over, like a broken record, that you really just have to fortify yourself with good knowledge. The second message that I got was from a woman who had encountered our work, and she had a very just fundamental question. How can I worship God and live my life here in America, live as an ethical Muslim? I'm paraphrasing her question. But at the heart of it, I think, is this understanding that there is a dichotomy between worship and living your life normally. Like if you are seeking to raise your kids, pursue a job, engage in the things that we normally do in life here, that somehow that might be not worship, or there are certain aspects of it, obviously, that can become not in line with worshiping God. So, I mean, I understood her question as, basically how do I integrate or orient my life towards worship in a healthy way while balancing out, the demands of our life here in this day and age in America. And I mean, in a nutshell, that is really what we talk about at the heart of our work at the Usuli Institute, which is really, how do you understand the ethical message of the Quran, and how do you apply it to the challenges that we face in our time now? And even just at a more personal level, really, like, how do you live being, I think, true to yourself and true to what God wants. And so these two messages, or these two experiences, are connected for me. And what I really wanted to talk about, especially with the backdrop of the attacks that are taking place against Islam in our world. So let me start by sharing this other story that happened to me shortly after Trump was elected. I know people were really up in arms about what to do, and some of the people that I follow on Substack, who are quite smart and brilliant, came together and wanted to create a group of people who wanted to push back and resist and help the world, knowing what was coming down the pike. So this one writer called together a meeting of people that she knew on Substack, from all different backgrounds, all different orientations, and people who were just interested in seeing how they could help. And so I joined that group, and I was very curious just to meet people. And we all had the opportunity to speak and share. And what was so striking to me is when I started speaking, of course, I talk about what I do and being Muslim, and what some of my ideas were. And so the response was really lovely. And a woman said to me, hearing you speak and seeing you, you do not remind me of someone like that I would think of as a Muslim. You do not look like someone that I imagine as a Muslim. And hearing you speak is making me question everything that I have been taught and know about Muslims and Islam. And at that moment, I was really touched and excited, because honestly, this is one of the things that I enjoy encountering. Actually, I enjoy speaking and not presenting as what people imagine a typical Muslim would be. And so the fact that she said that was so important to me, because I feel like, okay, in this moment, when so many lies are falling away, people are opening their eyes to the truth about the narratives that they have been fed through, whether it's mainstream media or just whatever assumptions, and for us as Muslims, the narratives that have been fed from an Islamophobic lens, from the real Islamophobic industry that grew after 9/11, people who are not paying attention will just naturally get the message that Muslims are scary, that Muslims are terrorists, that they are not human beings, that they are that Islam is not compatible with Western values. These are the messages that we're really invested in. Even the fact that Obama was a Muslim. These are all things that actually this industry came up with. If you're interested, you can look up Fear.Inc., which is a really extensive report that was written after 9/11, which followed the money, followed the whole influence, or the whole network of people that came together to create this narrative about Islam. And the reason was obviously, or maybe not obviously, that people wanted to justify being at war, a constant wartime economy. Because as we know from the way our world is, certain people will profit tremendously from weapons, from this whole wartime economy, and you need an enemy. And what better enemy than these backwards Muslims who have nothing in common with Western values. Anyway, it's a whole narrative and industry. So I was really excited when this woman had the reaction from hearing me speak that maybe I should reconsider everything that I ever thought about Muslims and Islam, in the same way that I'm reconsidering all of these other things that are now proving to be untrue. So realistically, if you think about what is the one common narrative that cuts across partisan lines, doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat, doesn't matter whether you're a Republican, doesn't really matter who you are or where you come from, it feels like the one thing that we can all agree on, if we're not paying attention, is that Muslims are scary. Muslims are terrorists, that Islam is scary, right? It's all part of this narrative, but it's so consistent and it's so prevalent. So think about that. If everyone can agree on that, if you think in terms of our world, what are the most important lies that you've always assumed were true that are now coming apart at the seams? If you think about some of the most commonly held beliefs in our world, in America, for example, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and that we need Israel to kind of keep this whole, these Muslim countries at bay. And now, in the age of genocide, how much all of that has fallen apart, right? When you start putting two and two together and you go, this is the biggest thing that they want us to believe about Islam and Muslims. Maybe that is the biggest lie. And maybe we should challenge that. And, recently, a report came out that they realize in Israel that their reputation has been so damaged from their genocide and all of the evil that they commit, that their reputation is basically unsalvageable and that they need a new strategy. And in order to continue with their plan, the best strategy moving forward is to convince people that the fear of Islam and the fear of Muslims is, such a greater threat that they need to continue doing what they're doing. And so you'll see, if you're paying attention, you will see that Islamophobic messaging has increased, that people are even repeating some of these same narratives. You're seeing the attacks really elevate. And there is no coincidence that, if that's the strategy that they are investing in, you see the impact of it. Ask yourself, are you hearing more about Sharia, the threat of Sharia, the threat of Muslims taking over? For those of us who are paying attention and who do know, we can see what's happening here. And I think that, if you are aware and you want to begin to pay attention, you can notice for yourself the rise in Islamophobic attacks, in focuses on certain probably keywords or messaging like Sharia, like Muslim Brotherhood, foreign terrorist organization. These are some of the new things that you'll start hearing. You see a lot more on social media, people burning Qurans, people threatening those that are genuinely like good people. For example, Omar Suleiman, who is an imam in Texas, who has always just been very kind and gentle and focused on social activism and education, that he's coming under brutal attack. People who are using language like, if you want to come and you want to replace the Constitution with the Quran, I will, personally kill you and harm your children and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you notice, if you're paying attention, that these things are on the rise. And those of us who are delving a little bit deeper recognize that this is part of the strategy that, Israel is putting into play so that the, downward spiral of their reputation can be offset, and they can continue to justify their genocidal campaign and continue to get support from America and whatever funding support that they get. Because if we as Americans, or we as people in the West, are convinced that Muslims and Islam are the threat, and that Israel needs to be there to tame that threat, then maybe we can look past the genocide and all of these other evil things. So there's definitely going to be more to come on that front. But working in the space that we work in, I wanted to comment for the converts who are just trying to navigate their way. As I often say in so many of my videos, your antidote to a lot of this confusion and hate speech is really good education. And I believe that the work that we do at the Usuli Institute can help build people from the foundations. So when you start hearing things that are ugly or scary about the Quran or about the traditions of the Prophet, we actually have spent a lot of time putting out content that walks you through, with Dr. Abul Fadl, who is a learned jurist. He's dedicated his entire life to studying the Islamic tradition, the Islamic legal tradition. And he walks us through the Quran. He walks us through the traditions of the Prophet, and help us create like a really solid moral framework for understanding what is this message about. And I just wanted to share with you, I mean, if you come to our channel, you'll see that we have like a gazillion videos. They're sometimes, very intimidating because they're long, and they're, when you start thinking about, oh my gosh, they have hundreds of hours, like, over 500 hours of content on just, going through every single chapter of the Quran. That's a big daunting task. But I am not understating the importance, I hope, of gently walking through that material. If you are really interested in rebuilding your foundations and addressing this doubt, resisting, pushing back against all of this darkness that is being forced upon you just, every time you look at your phone or turn on the TV or turn on, whatever you listen to, the only way to really counter that is to replace it with good knowledge. And I just wanted to take a moment to share this little bit from one of the chapters that we studied. And I think that this is something that, this is something that I didn't know after being a Muslim for probably 25 years. When we started this journey of going through what is called the Project Illumine Quranic commentaries. And if you go to the Usuli Institute channel, you can find our entire journey there. But what was completely eye-opening to me was the learning about the equivalent of the Ten Commandments within the Islamic tradition. This is something that has never been spoken about, and I think this is quite original to this journey. And let me just share with you. So this is when we covered Surah Isra, Isra, chapter 17 or Surah 17 in the Quran. And just to summarize, I mean, if you want to hear the entire, class, and I really encourage people to do this, go to our classes on Surah Isra. And we learn that here is our equivalent, the Islamic equivalent of the Ten Commandments. And it's more than 10 commandments, but let me just summarize this for you. Number 1, worship one God. 2, don't punish one for the sins of another. Accountability is personal and individual. 3, honor your parents. 4, take care of your blood relatives. 5, take care of the destitute and the poor. 6, take care of the refugees, the displaced, the dispossessed, the wayfarer. 7, do not spend to excess and do not be miserly. 8, do not kill your children. 9, do not commit adultery or fornication. 10, do not commit murder. 11, do not usurp money or the money or the property of orphans. 12, observe your obligations and promises. Don't break promises. Keep your word. 13, do not cheat. Do not cheat in measures in trade or commerce. 14, do not speak about what you don't know. Do not deal in hearsay or conjecture. 15, do not be arrogant or full of hubris. 16, when you speak, speak kindly and only speak good. Do not spread rumors and do not slander. Now, whether, however you want to number that, those are the principles. That is the ethical code that Muslims must live by. That is Shariah. That is at the foundation of Shariah. So everything that Shariah produces, and the word Shariah, it's an Arabic word that means the path to God and from God. And so if you even apply the concept in any other religion, the path to God and from God, whether you're a Christian, you're a Jew, you're, any other religious orientation, the path to beauty, the path to the divine, the path that will earn you favor with a loving, beautiful God. Okay, that anything that would fall under the purview of Sharia has to align with these principles in the Islamic context. So when people start throwing around the term Sharia and, oh my gosh, creeping Sharia, it's so easy to hide behind this Arabic word that is completely unfamiliar, and it's so easy for people to create a whole narrative around what this word means because, people who are invested in creating a scary narrative and have invested a lot of money in it will go way out of their way to convince you that Sharia means this, jihad means that. Jihad actually means struggle, okay? Like if you're doing your homework so you can pass a test, that is actually jihad, But we are led to believe in America that jihad means armed warfare, terrorism, and that's just simply not true. But you wouldn't know that if you weren't educated or you weren't paying attention. If you are not Muslim and have no interest in figuring out what's the truth about Muslims, and you just hear that from mainstream media, then you will be subject to this fear-mongering and vulnerable to it. But as Muslims and as Muslim converts, when we don't take the time to learn our tradition and understand what's really behind it and build that relationship with God so that we know in our hearts and minds that anything that we hear that isn't beautiful, that isn't divine, isn't godly, if we hear something about our tradition that is ungodly, that it simply cannot be true. It cannot be of the divine. So these are the things that are so important for us to build within ourselves. A lot of people write to us at the Asuli Institute because they are suffering from doubt. They are suffering from faith crises. And quite frankly, I think probably 99.9% of those are based in the misinformation, or at least, certainly their doubt is validated from this misinformation. And, truly the way to counter that is to build your relationship with God and to invest in knowledge. And, like I spend a lot of time, like so many other people, right, looking on my phone, looking on social media. Sometimes it's a reaction to just the state of the world. You feel like you want to either distract yourself or hear something that makes you feel better, or maybe just stay on top of what's happening in the world, which is, like the news is quite traumatic. And it's a lot like just watching, it's like consuming junk food. And I realized this week that I don't really want to consume junk food anymore. It's bad for me. It makes me feel bad. It makes me feel sad. And so I went back and started listening again to some of our educational content, specifically the life of the prophet. We have a new series that we are have been actually been dropping episodes for the last year. And rehearing even things that I had already heard before, I felt like I was watching content that was nourishing for my soul. And it was at that point that I really felt like, oh my gosh, I see what I'm doing. When I'm reaching for my phone and I'm looking on YouTube or I'm looking on Instagram or whatever, TikTok, it's almost like fast food that is just trying to fill this feeling in my soul where I just feel like, oh, I just need something, to distract me or to make me feel better. But when I actually engaged with content that is nourishing, that teaches me something, that grounds me in my tradition, that tells me something beautiful to think about, that engages my critical mind, and that resonates with my heart and my soul, that's when I feel grounded, I feel better, I feel more connected, and I feel like encouraged and empowered to create good and do something to push back. And so I realized, I don't want to consume all of that junk anymore. And I don't know if you're in that same boat with me, but I just thought I would share that in case that is something valuable. And even learning about Shariah, learning about the commandments in the Islamic tradition. So much of what we learned in that journey with the Quran that we did over 3 years at the Usuli Institute was truly soul nourishing and strength building, confidence building. It transformed everything I understood about being Muslim and the Quran. And so I just, really want to encourage you, if you need some soul nourishment, right, go and find those videos on Project Illumine, either about the Quran or about the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Pick any of them and just turn it on and see what you think. We've gotten enough messages from people that say that once they start, they start binge watching everything. And and I understand that. And I also understand like the hesitation. Sometimes people don't want to start because they feel like, well, if I'm going to start learning about the Quran, I want to start it right. And I don't want to, do it unless I can really commit to doing it. And no, just start. It's like exercise. Just start, just try it out and see how you feel, and just take one step and another step. And it'll make a huge difference. Like, just to bring it back to like what I've been doing recently, I started playing pickleball. And it's like, I needed to get in shape, and I needed to find something fun that would, keep me going. I started to play, and of course, I was out of shape, and so it was hard. But then I realized, oh my God, this is so much fun. And I kept showing up, and I kept showing up. And then slowly I started to feel better. And then it changed things, and I think it's like that with everything. You just have to get past that initial inertia and just try it, and don't create reasons not to. Just jump in and try it. And it'll make a big difference. And I think when it comes to our faith and our religion and where we are in the world and all of the attacks against, Sharia and Islam and Muslims, part of our resistance that we can do every single day is just start watching nourishing videos that can help us learn something, undo something like harmful that we understand or believed, like things that we believe about our faith, and replace it with something really beautiful and empowering. And these things will, answer the question of how to live as an ethical Muslim in our time. And for converts, when you know so little about the tradition and you're so overwhelmed, I think it's so important to remember critical thinking is key. Don't necessarily, listen to everything. People are going to start throwing all kinds of things at you. And you came to this faith with your mind, with your critical thinking skills. That's something that is unfortunately in short supply in our communities. But converts often are attracted to the beautiful message of the the theology, and start getting tripped up when they start seeing how people practice. And it's often because those practices are grounded in culture, which is not necessarily the same as theology. And oftentimes people continue to do what they've always done or what their parents have always done out of habit, right? And aren't we told in the Quran that it's like, oh, you just do what your forefathers have done? This tradition and this religion is about engaging your critical thinking skills and applying them to living as ethically and beautifully as possible as you can, given our current moment. There's so much to say. I really hope that people will take the time to check out these resources that we've put out there for the Usuli Institute. Now is the time to educate yourself and not fall into the trap of, Islam is, black and white, it's easy, there are certain rules that you always have to follow. It's about a critical engagement. It's about creativity. It's about living your life engaged and thinking about, how to please God and bring value to yourself, your society, and your world in the most beautiful way possible. So I hope that you will please check out the resources. I will put them in the description of the video, and try and stay strong in these difficult times. And I just wanted to point out that I'm wearing my German Shepherd scarf. Sadly, my dear beloved dog Doogie, my German Shepherd, who you've seen in the past in the background, he passed away very suddenly, shortly after my last video, and I'm so sad. His presence is greatly missed, but the memory lives on, and I hope that I will see Doogie again someday in a much better place. So please say a prayer for Doogie. Okay, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you.
I witness returning back